I'd like to call to order the 224th Brookfield Town Meeting, and I would like to point out to all the residents of our town that this is the 300th anniversary of town meetings in New Hampshire. So that's kind of a momentous occasion, and I thought it was something everybody would like to know. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence for the townspeople who died in the previous year and for our selectmen who are overseas, our servicemen who are overseas. Thank you. Now I'm going to introduce the selectmen. Richard Zacher, the chair. Brian Robichaud. Rick Surratt has a business engagement and was unable to make the rescheduled time of the town meeting. Are there any new residents present? If so, we'd like to have you stand and state your name so everybody can get to know you. Good. If there's anyone present who is not a registered voter, I will remind you that it's a misdemeanor if you try to vote. We have a couple of announcements. As some of you are aware, last year we circulated a petition to allow the selectmen to divide the town meeting so that we could have this session on a Saturday going forward, and that did not make the ballot this year. That happened because the petition seemed to have been misplaced somewhere between the town meeting and the selectmen. And we looked at RSA 39(2)A and determined that the selectmen didn't have the authority to put it on the ballot on their own. Consequently, they've asked me to put a petition in the back so that if people would like us to do that going forward, Rose has it in the back. We can then deliver it directly to the selectmen here today, and it will not have the opportunity to get lost. Frank Frazier, I believe you have an announcement.
Yes. As one thing is true for those 300 years here in New Hampshire town meetings, that the town's only run by people volunteering. So, as you know, we've got multiple boards and commissions and elected positions in town. I was mainly looking for new people. There aren't any new people here today to try and put an arm on. But if you're not currently on a board or commission, we urge you to come out to a meeting. Just pick one. Go to the website. All the meetings and things. If something looks interesting, come attend the meeting. If you attend more than one and two, we will make you an alternate automatically almost. And we would love more participation. There's one person in town who has been doing that for over 20 years, who's decided to take a break. So I want, on behalf of the selectmen and the town, we want to take a minute to personally thank Richard Dick Peckham on all We're hoping he's going to get bored in a couple of minutes and come back and join us on conservation, but we'll see.
We've been debating whether or not to allow a motion to dispense with the reading of the rules. The selectmen asked me not to because we have new people, but no new people stood up. So if people would like me to dispense with the reading of the rules, somebody can make a motion. Otherwise, I will read the rules.
I so move.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
We will dispense with the reading of the rules. They are posted on the town website, and I will remind everyone that you can overrule rulings of the moderator at any time by majority vote, that being the most important rule of the entire set of rules. I'm going to announce the results of the election that we held on Tuesday. For selectman, Richard Zacher is the winner with 79 votes. For moderator, William Marsh is the winner with 80 votes. For auditor, Amanda Pierce is the winner with 80 votes. For planning board, Gerald Cicroni with 33 votes and Timothy Strauss with 55 votes are the winner for the 3-year slot. Diane Smith got 32 votes and William Zayda got 26 votes. For the planning board 1-year slot, I declare Diane Smith the winner with 9 write-in votes. For trustee of the trust fund 3 years, Richard Norton is the winner with 77 votes. For cemetery trustee 3 years, Judy Lewis is the winner with 80 votes. For cemetery trustee 2 years, Roberta Holland is the winner with 20 write-in votes. And for supervisor of the checklist, Rose Zacher is the winner with 80 votes. We're going to ask the people who were elected to office to stay at the end of the meeting so that they can be sworn in. We'll now move on to the warrant articles. Warrant article number 2. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be deposited into the Moose Mountain Capital Reserve Fund. The selectmen recommend that motion. Brian, do you wish to make that?
Yes, I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Brian, you may speak to your motion.
We currently have a bridge on Moose Mountain, over on Moose Mountain, that is in rather rough shape. The state has let us know it. We have had some engineering studies that have been undertaken thus far, and we have some estimates for a new deck and new bridge. We've been putting money aside for the past few years. We currently have approximately $120,000 in this fund. We know it's going to be around $150,000 for a full bridge replacement. So this last $20,000 to be deposited into that fund should get us the amount of money we need for the bridge repair.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries. Warrant article number 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $16,750 in order to fund the balance of the Moose Mountain Bridge engineering and to fund this appropriation by authorizing the withdrawal of said sum from the Moose Mountain Capital Reserve Fund. Selectmen recommend this appropriation. Brian, do you wish to make that motion?
Yes, I do.
Yes, is there a second?
Yes.
Yes, very good. Brian, do you wish to speak to it?
Again, engineering is a huge part of getting a bridge built in order for the state to give us what we need to go ahead and get this done permit-wise. We've had a big part of the engineering done. This is the final installment to get the engineering, get the stamps, get everything done, get the plans so we can move forward, hopefully this upcoming year. And this is the final installment.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion carries. Warrant article number 4, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $80,000 to be deposited into the Road and Bridge Repair Capital Reserve Fund. The selectmen recommend this appropriation. Brian, do you wish to make that motion?
I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
Do you wish to speak to it?
I do. We have a Road and Bridge Repair Fund. Currently, the principal balance is $149,000. We try to put money into this fund annually in order to complete larger road projects. When I say road projects, I mean break a road down, re-gravel it, repave it. This is an effort so we don't have to raise a huge amount of money. Years we're doing less road projects, we can build this particular fund. We have several projects slated for this spring, summer, and $80,000 should cover a majority of that road work that needs to get done.
Any further discussion? Go ahead, Diane.
So 149,000, that's, sorry, let me start this question differently. Sorry, Diane Smith, 503 Wentworth Road. I remember the rules.
Thank you. We did dispense with reading.
$80,000 added to what you said was the, this is for stocking away for future road projects or for current year road projects?
This is going to be money we're going to put into that trust fund with the anticipation, as you can see in question number 5, that we're looking to withdraw that same amount of money for road projects. If we do not use all that money, it'll go towards the balance of the fund to help further make it healthy for future road projects.
You may continue, yes.
So that $80,000, does that include the finishing of Bryce Drive?
Yes, right now we're slated to do Bryce Drive, resurface pipe Pike Brook Road, and we're looking at some aprons that should be added to several of the dirt roads in town.
So that's all wrapped into the
That's,
$80,000?
yes, excuse me, yes, that's more or less all of that there. If we go over, we can always tap into that remaining balance, but I think we're pretty close to the 80 grand.
Yeah, we appropriated, excuse me, never mind, thank you, that answers my question.
Gary Ciccone, 85 Lightford Road. The prospective road repairs that you're going to do this year, do you have a hard copy of the proposed work that's to be done and estimates for what it's going to cost on an individual project basis?
Yes.
Can we get our hands on that somehow? How do we do that?
I can get you a copy. I can print them up, and I'll bring them on over. I have them all. I have them on a spreadsheet, and I can print them off, and I can have them in the office.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you need that before you vote? Do you need that before you vote?
Oh.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The warrant article passes. Warrant number 5. Yep. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $80,000 for the major repair of town roads and to fund this appropriation by authorizing the withdrawal of said sum from the Road and Bridge Repair Capital Reserve Fund. The selectmen recommend this appropriation. Brian, do you wish to make that motion?
Yes, I do.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Good. Worried about that for a minute.
I'm with you.
Brian, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, briefly. Again, this is the money that we're going to pull out of that fund in order to complete the upcoming projects for 2018.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Go ahead.
Ken Primo, Tumbledown Dick Road. So this is the same $80,000 as from number 4, correct?
Right.
Okay, just looking at the wording that,
It's like you're taking money from here, putting it there, and pulling right out.
Okay.
But if you don't take it all out, at least that capital reserve fund continues to grow for future projects.
Okay, just making sure it wasn't another.
No, it's not another.
No. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Warrant article passes. Number 6. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500 to be deposited into the conservation fund. The selectmen recommend this appropriation. Brian, do you wish to make that as a motion?
Yes, I do.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Very good. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, briefly. The Conservation Fund, we have the Conservation Commission here in town. They are currently doing a lot of work on the town property, aka woods, aka forest, over in town, and they're looking to go ahead and do some studies on foresting, harvesting, as well as some additional work with like signs and kiosks. So that kind of $500 goes towards their fund that they use for any kind of special projects or any kind of special studies that they deem necessary.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Warrant article passes. Number 7, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500 to be deposited into the Heritage Fund. The selectmen recommend this appropriation. Brian, do you wish to make that as a motion?
I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
Good job. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, it is. Yes. Again, the Heritage Commission is run by Mary Lou and Harriet. I'm also sitting on that as well. The Heritage Commission does things like they maintain town history, they work on this building, they even have done funds for our new lights, and so also any kind of studies that we need for new windows, so on and so forth. So we put money into what is a relatively small fund that they manage in order for any kind of special projects and studies, and occasional buying items and so on and so forth.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Warrant article passes. Number 8, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be deposited into the townhouse repair capital reserve fund. Selectmen recommend this appropriation. Rich, do you intend to make that motion?
Yes.
Is there a second? Very good. Wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. The townhouse repair fund is used to repair this facility. Looking around it, you understand we have a lot of work to do, especially on the outside. We have to paint it. We have some clapboards that have to be replaced. We have to plaster inside. We have to repaint. So the $30,000 goes into that trust fund to start accumulating some money so that we can get this work done. It's dedicated to this facility. Today we have $45,000 in the trust fund, and we've started to get some estimates for the work, and we think we're going to need a total of about $100,000 to do the entire job. So we're on our way.
Very good. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Doug.
First of all, I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for putting this matrix in the town report for the town property maintenance plan. So that's where my question stems from. It's projected in this plan that it's going to, the townhouse costs will be $35,000 this year. Is that correct?
When we did the plan, we were looking at maybe even reside. We said we can't reside, so we're looking at painting. So painting's about $20,000.
I'm sorry?
Painting should be about $20,000, and we may have to replace some of the wood, some of the wood shop. So that's the other part of it.
Right. The itemization is paint exterior for $20,000, siding repair for $10,000, and handicap ramp for $5,000. That's $35,000. Currently, the fund has almost $45,000 in it, and we're being asked to kick in an additional $30,000. Yet your plan says that over this year and the next 2 years collectively, the expected costs are $77,000, which is pretty close to what we have with this additional $30,000. So are you expecting that we won't be asked to fund this for the next 2 years?
No, I'm not. I expect we will. What's not on the list is we have to replace all the windows, do all the windows. I don't think that's on the list. I think it's about $2,000 per window. And I think we've got, what, 8 of them? 1, 2, 10 of them.
Will you be updating that plan?
Absolutely, every year.
So if we have 44,000, okay, are you then expecting us to be supporting this with the same level of taxes for the next several years, $30,000 a year?
I think it depends on how much we spend this year and what the plan looks like. I mean, if we find out it's going to cost more, someone suggested, for example, that the siding in the schoolhouse has to be completely replaced. We don't know what that's going to amount to. So as we go forward and get more data, we'll update the spreadsheet.
Okay, so I guess the bottom line for me is the concern that we are, by making this appropriation, that counts, that gets calculated into a higher tax rate. If we don't really need the money this year, that's an opportunity for us to ensure that our taxes this year are kept at the lowest possible level. And I'm just suggesting that I understand wanting to have a cushion, but we'll still have a $10,000 cushion at the end of the year if you do what you had outlined in the plan.
And you understand that if we don't spend the money, it's used to reduce the tax rate, right? The appropriation goes in. If we don't spend money, come September 1st, we true up the budget, and then that number is used to adjust our tax rate. So with all expenditures, other than money going into trust funds, you're right there. Money goes into the trust fund, we raise that money. If we don't spend money, it's used to reduce the tax rate come September 1st.
Are you talking about the unfunded balance that you folks have the opportunity to use?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about, we true up our budget September 1st. We tell DRA what we think we're going to spend and what we think we're going to have for revenue. At that point, they use that data to calculate our tax rate. So it's important for us to authorize spending, but if we don't have to spend it, we don't spend it, and we use that to reduce our tax rate.
Okay. You're the selectman, and I don't want to disagree with you, but the statute, I've tried very hard to come to understand how our tax rate is set. And looking back at this year's tax rate setting, or sorry, last fall's tax rate setting, as well as the year before, DRA uses the total appropriation from town meeting. They do not look at what the net cost is, what the expenses are expected to be for the town at the end of the calendar year. They have to start by statute with the appropriation. So the fact that we add more money into the budget than we really need automatically sets that first number for a DRA to use. And that's my reason for suggesting that if we don't really need it, yes, it stays in the fund, but it affects the tax rate this year. Just wanted some clarification. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Gary?
I heard the number 100,000. How'd you come up with that?
We took a look at siding for about 20,000, which we thought we could do, but pretty pricey. Painting, 20,000. Labor to put the siding on, another 20,000. Windows, 12,000, which we didn't put in there. We got an estimate on the plaster for 30,000, and we have to paint this room. We thought 30,000 to paint it.
Well, all the individual items, did you get estimates for the individual items?
Some of them for the near-term items. We got an estimate on the plaster, we got an estimate on the siding, we got an estimate on painting.
Single estimate or multiple? I mean multiple per item or single per item?
Single per item. We didn't go out with proposals yet. This is just a planning number.
I understand, but what substantiates the efficacy of those estimates other than a proposal? No, it wasn't a proposal, it was just a guesstimate by evidently someone that does that kind of work. And incidentally, I have done a lot of work here. I'm really not interested in performing these items, so I don't have a fiduciary interest in my questions. What I'm more or less getting at is we're putting a budget estimate on the table for the town to decide or digest without a whole lot of empirical data, just one person's guesstimate on what something's going to cost. And that will only come to fruition if that one person who guesstimated is willing to live with that guesstimate and then perform the work. And maybe it's accurate, maybe it's inaccurate. So I'm saying we've come up with a number for all these things, and I'm just saying it's kind of...
We needed a planning number. We needed a planning number. All it is, we went to the trades to do the work and said, we don't want a quote, we don't want a proposal, we're trying to put together a planning number. What would you suggest this number should be? And that's how we got there.
I get it. But it could be grossly inaccurate depending on the circumstances, which means that the budget would automatically have to change at a day in the near future to actually perform the work. That's my point in question. And I would suggest that there are a bunch of us in this town that have expertise in these particular fields, and that perhaps, and I also think this should be reflected with road repairs and improvements, that on a voluntary basis, and I happen to be one of them. I didn't know I was going to be staying in Brookfield. In fact, I didn't think I was because of my situation, but now that I guess I am, I'd be willing to donate time to assemble this data on a little bit more accurate basis. Do you follow me?
Hey, Gary, I can speak for the road, though. We're coming within the 5% variance of what our estimates are. When we estimate a road, we're within 5%, if not even closer than 5%. So I think the data we're using is pretty accurate.
Who does that?
I work with the road agent. The road agent gets costs from our vendors, be it asphalt and gravel and grinding, and we update our spreadsheet annually.
Well, no offense toward our illustrious road agent. He's a good guy, does a job. Well, for instance, in a normal town that's a little bit larger than Brookfield, they usually have an engineering department and et cetera, who does all that stuff. And the engineering department is salaried, and they have no fiduciary interest in the results, except the fact that they oversee projects and expense budgets. I don't understand how anyone that has a fiduciary interest in the accomplishment of these projects should be the sole supplier of vendors and estimates, no offense intended toward the road agent, but there should be an independent body. I'm not finished. There should be an independent body. We used to have one, a road committee, of people that have that expertise.
We're talking about the townhouse repair?
Yeah.
That's true, we're getting off.
Well, okay, well, so, but I'm talking about the same thing with the townhouse repair. Apples and apples, not apples and pears. That it would be an interesting thing to have someone that volunteers their services on a non-fiduciary basis to help make certain decisions or acquire information that would assist this stuff. That's all.
We would
I'm
gladly
done.
take your help. We
Huh?
would, trust me, we would gladly take your help in providing input to these budget numbers.
Okay.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Seeing none, all those in favor of the warrant article, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
The motion carries. I think we should note in the minutes that Gary's volunteered to be on a committee. Number 9. See if the town will vote to increase the veterans tax credit from $100 to $250 and to adopt the provisions of RSA 7228B so that the veterans tax credit will be available not only to persons who served in a qualifying war or armed conflict, but also to all persons who are residents of New Hampshire who served not less than 90 days on active service in the armed forces of the United States and were honorably discharged or separated from service, or the spouse or surviving spouse of such residents, provided the person is not eligible for and is not already receiving a veteran's credit under RSA 7228 or a tax credit for service-connected total disability under RSA 7235. Which I understand you wish to make that motion.
I do.
Is there a second? Good. You wish to speak to it?
Yes. Last year, as you may or may not remember, we had a citizens petition warrant article that tried to accomplish what this warrant article does this year, but the wording of that petition warrant article last year was such that it didn't accomplish what we wanted it to accomplish. So we said, the selectmen said that we'd put the warrant article, we'd put a warrant article on the budget into the warrant this year that dealt with that. And we had this warrant article drafted up by the attorney. It does exactly what it says. It raises the exemption from $100 to $250 and broadens the participation to people that I believe have 90 days active service.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to the cost of the warrant article?
Sure. We have 54 veterans today. So, and that's the only thing we can quantify based upon 54 veterans today. $150 per veteran would be an increase of about $8,100 in the exemptions. We don't know how many other veterans would participate in the program. So that's the unknown.
Any further discussion? Diane?
I received this credit, so I just wanted to disclose that. My concern is that it's a very large unknown that we're being asked there's two variables. There's two variables in this warrant article. One is adding additional folks that are eligible, and the other is that we increase the cost. I'm very uncomfortable not knowing how many additional people will come forward and seek this credit before I would, so I'm uncomfortable with making the decision on the amount without knowing what that amount would be. And I would ask that, so I'm going to request, let me see if I remember the right procedure here. I would move that the part of the warrant article that increases the payment, or excuse me, the credit to all the veterans be retained at $100.
Yeah, I believe that that's a motion to amend the warrant article, and a motion to amend is certainly in order, but it's supposed to be in writing according to the rules that we did not read. So I will give you time to write that down while I let Rob Collins speak.
So I'm sorry, Rob Collins, Stoneham Road. I'm not clear on the cost. So I understand what the warrant article says, but what does that mean in terms of, could you put it in terms that are a little easier to understand in terms of like the non-veteran, people that are not eligible for this, how much is their tax rate going to be increased? I mean, as a result of this. And I understand based on what Diana's saying, we don't know everything, but for the veterans we do know, how much is that effect going to be on everyone else's tax rate?
A good planning number. For every $100,000 we spend, it's 8 cents on our tax rate. So this is $8,000 that we're going to have to recover. So that is about 8 cents on the tax rate.
So all the non-veteran, even with no additional participation, all the non-veteran households are going to increase by 8 cents.
Everybody will increase by 8 cents, even the veterans.
Okay.
Planning up.
And if the participation goes up significantly, then we could be talking 15 or 20 cents.
Could be. Could stay at 8 cents. We don't know. We don't know the magnitude of that unknown.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane's amendment is to strike the words "to increase the veterans' tax credit from $100 to $250 and." So it would just be to adopt the provisions. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay. Motion on the amendment has been made and seconded. We're now discussing the amendment. Bill Nelson.
Bill Nelson, Lyford Road. What does all veterans refer to? Those who serve, or with or without those additional folks being?
Would someone care to answer the question?
I thought it was mentioned that it would cover all veterans. Is that the current rules, or does that include the new people that could be added on? Are they still in here or not?
The way the warrant article is written, we would increase the opportunity to participate from the 54 we have today to some unknown number.
With the amendment?
My understanding is it doesn't include all veterans, so that they have to be honorably discharged or separated from service and their qualifications in the warrant article. But the amount would leave their credit at $100 for everyone. Bill?
For clarification, the people that would get it who are not already covered would be the people who served between the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. And as far as that, these people were ready to serve if needed. How many, I have no idea. But it's that group of people, the 4 years or whatever, that did serve, who were ready to go to war if needed.
Diane, you've already spoken, so I'm going to see if anybody else wants to speak. Go ahead.
Mark Stengel, Bryce Drive. Doesn't that include the people after the economic or the other songs?
To the best of my knowledge, it's only, to the best of my knowledge, Korea and Vietnam. I think everybody after Vietnam is covered because we had Iraq and we had all these other things going on.
I'm not covered.
Well, I guess it would cover you because it doesn't specify years.
Right.
Okay. You know the word?
My understanding matches yours. Any further discussion? Then I'll recognize Diane again. Diane says she doesn't need to speak again. Any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
The amendment fails. We're now back to discussing the warrant article. Any further discussion on the warrant article? Frank?
Yeah, I'm going to make 3 points. Frank Frazier, Lyford Road, is one, most towns give the maximum, which is 500. We've always been way below what almost all the rest of towns in New Hampshire do under this RSA. So bumping it to 250 is still keeping us fiscally conservative as getting there. Number 2 is if we try this and it does have a great impact on our town over the next 2 or 3 years, if a huge amount of people take it, we can always bring it back up again and lower it at that point in time if it's really hurting our taxes. So it is an unknown. We can find out what it is, and then if we need to, we can rectify it by putting another warrant article on and taking it down. And third, this country talks every day, politicians talk every day about supporting our veterans, and we don't do it. This is a little small way to do it here today. Thank you. And I'm not a veteran, I'm not eligible. So.
Any further discussion on the warrant article? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
The warrant article passes. Number 10, to see if the town will vote to designate the selectmen as agents to expend funds from the town building and ground maintenance capital reserve fund. Selectmen recommend this petition. Rich, if you wish to make that as a motion.
I do.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yep. The key words in this warrant article, words are agents to expend. When the warrant article was created in 1991, those words weren't there, which means if the town or the selectmen want to take money out of this fund, we need a town meeting or a special town meeting. And by inserting these words, it gives the opportunity to the selectmen to pull the money out if needed for the purpose of the fund without its special meeting.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? The warrant article passes. Number 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be deposited in the town garage and storage shed capital reserve fund. The selectmen recommend this appropriation. Rich, do you wish to make that motion?
Yes, I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Rich, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, this money is going to be used to replace our facility in the back of this complex. It's an old storage shed. It's started to fail, and we know we're going to have to replace it. So we have a planning number of $25,000 we're shooting for. This adds $5,000 to that fund so that we can replace the building in the future.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Warrant article passes. Warrant article number 12. To see if the town will vote to recognize the separate functions of the town treasurer, RSA 4129, from the Board of Selectmen's responsibility to manage the financial affairs of the town, RSA 419, in the following manner. 1. Create and staff a financial administrative assistant position for the purpose of assisting the Board of Selectmen managing the town's financial affairs, account number 4130. 2. Raise and appropriate $11,800 for the purpose of the financial administrative assistant's wages. 3. Eliminate the staff position created May 9, 2017 to review the treasurer's monthly bank reconciliations and annual reports, account number 4150.2, and reduce that budget line by $600. 4. Reduce the treasurer's annual salary, account number 4150.1, by $10,000 to $2,500 to reflect the duties of that position as defined in RSA 4129. Diane, do you wish to make that motion?
Yes, I do.
Is there a second?
Second.
Good. Motion's been made and seconded. Diane, do you wish to speak to the motion? Frank, I recognize you.
I would like to make an amendment to the motion.
Okay.
I move to amend warrant Article 12 as follows, to delete items 3 and 4 in their entirety from the warrant article. Here's my written.
Thank you, Frank. I will mention that I called DRA about this warrant article, and they told me that Articles 3 and 4 would only be effective if we took them up as amendments to the next warrant article, and this would be implementing DRA's recommendation. They told me that Part 2 would be effective as it is, and Part 1 is essentially advisory to the selectmen, as we can't force them to actually hire someone. Motion on the floor. Has this amendment been seconded?
Second.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to delete items 3 and 4 from warrant article number 12. Frank, can you speak to
I'll speak to the amendment. The reason I made the amendment was just that I saw the feedback from the DRA, by the way, that's the Department of Revenue Administration for the state of New Hampshire, who has some input on any of our warrant articles that impact money. They watch the money. And it's their point of view, their recommendation, that items 3 and 4 relate solely to our budget, which we're going to discuss in item 13. So if we do pass this amendment, I don't think it impacts the major part of this amendment. We can still discuss it, the intent of the amendment. And if we do pass the amended warrant article 12, we can then, when we get to item 13, the budget, we can go back and talk about 3 and 4. They're not off the table. They're just being pushed down in the meeting to an appropriate place where the DRA feels that any discussion about reducing the treasurer's salary or anything like that belongs in the budget discussion, not in the context of this warrant article. It should make this warrant article a little easier to discuss for us here today, too. That's why I made the amendment.
Thank you, Frank. I will, if this warrant article passes, I'll make a point of recognizing you when we discuss warrant article number 13 to make an amendment there as well. Diane, I believe you had the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Frank. Most of you probably know that I crafted this warrant article. I too ran it by DRA, and I had similar feedback. So you talk to the same person, or they're all singing the same tune. The purpose of having included the number 3 and 4 in the warrant article was to illustrate that the intent was not to inflate the overall operating budget by the amount noted in item number 2. I have no problem with Frank's strategy.
Further discussion? Hello.
Good morning. My name is Mary McLean. I live at 9 Tibbetts Hill Road in Brookfield. I am the current treasurer for the town of Brookfield. I was first appointed to this position in 2009 by the selectmen at that time, and I have been elected 3 times since then to maintain this position. I'd like to just start by saying that the selectmen and I work very hard to comply with the state of New Hampshire RSAs that apply to the work we do. I can assure the voters of the town of Brookfield that we are in compliance with the RSAs that deal with the treasurer's work. The RSAs basically state that I'm in charge of the money and I'm in charge of the books. I am allowed to delegate some of those responsibilities, but in the end, the responsibility lies with me. I would like to emphasize that we're a small town. We are a small town in Brookfield and in New Hampshire. I totally appreciate that if you're a small town or a small organization, you strive for separation of duties to the best degree that you can. Because of that, the selectmen and I have taken steps to put in place some important procedures to help with this. I don't deposit all the money in this town. I was given the right and have made access of it so that Virginia, as the town clerk, and Diana, as the town tax collector, deposit their own funds. The funds that come from the state of New Hampshire are deposited directly into our bank accounts. I deposit the least amount of cash in this town. This year we added a person, Cheryl Guerre, to review the monthly bank reconciliations and some of my spreadsheets to add another level of separation and to also give us another little system of checks and balances. The selectmen are the first people to open the monthly bank statements, not me, and they look them over for anything that doesn't look right. They also are the people that first approve the invoices, and then I write the checks. It doesn't go any other way. I would like to say that I took this job 9 years ago because I enjoy doing financial work. It's what I've done most of my life, and because I love the town I live in. To keep our management costs and our taxes at a lower level, many of us in Brookfield that are elected officials or even appointed, as you all know, including myself, wear many hats. But we see that the town work is done with efficiency and professionalism. Finally, I'd just like to say, remind you again, we're a small town. We're in compliance with the state of New Hampshire RSAs for the treasurer's position, and I ask you to vote no on this warrant article.
Now we'll be in order. I'd like to ask the selectmen if they wish to say anything.
Yes, we do.
We're doing the amendment first.
Yes.
Yep, they can still talk.
We're on the amendment, not on the warrant article.
I'll wait for the warrant article.
Okay, fine. Points well taken. Any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Amendment passes. Rich, I'll let you know.
Echoing what Mary Lou said, she's been elected to the office since 2010. Last year there was some questions about our data in our town report. And you remember we came to the town meeting and asked for another $5,000 to have an auditing firm take a look at the books in our process. We did that. We engaged, and I have a little trouble with the name, Klodnik and Sanderson down in Concord, who work with a lot of municipalities reviewing the books. We met with them. We suggested that we might need an audit. They suggested we don't need an audit because we're a small town. If we were a large town, i.e. Manchester, Rochester, an audit would be an order. What they suggested we do is engage them to review our process, review our books, and come back with some findings as to how we might improve the process. What they found was that the discrepancies that were highlighted in the town report were because we were booking taxes that were owed the town as income and not as accounts receivable. So that $120,000, $130,000 that we carry every year as uncollected taxes was appearing incorrectly in the town report. That's been corrected. There were a couple other minor adjustments to the way transactions were being booked by Mary Lou. They found no missing money. They suggested we stay with the same software we have, which is QuickBooks, as opposed to upgrading to a much more expensive, sophisticated system. Their recommendation was we don't need it. It's a small town. They did suggest that we make some process changes, which we did, and that is what Mary Lou highlighted. We have Cheryl look at the books every month. We have Mary Lou and the tax collector reconcile their numbers every month. And it's our recommendation that we keep the process the way we have it. We support Mary Lou and the job she's doing.
Further discussion? Dick Peck.
Dick Peckham, Palmer Drive. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Further discussion? Diane, I'll recognize you as soon as I recognize everybody else who hasn't spoken yet. Diane, I'll recognize you next.
Diana Peckham, Palmer Drive, Brookfield. This is just for clarification. I do want people, the town people, to realize that We are audited by our own auditors that are elected in the town every year using the guidelines dictated by Department of Revenue Administration. I just don't want people to think we are not audited every year, because we are. Thank you.
Care to speak to the expense of that as opposed to hiring an auditor?
May I speak?
Yes, you may.
Yes, what is your turn?
Did you have any knowledge about that?
I believe
500 a year.
you get 500
No,
a year.
250 each.
250 each.
500 a
The
year.
two auditors get $250 each for auditing all the books in town, not just mine or Ginny's, but trustees of the trust fund, the treasurers, everyone, as I say, which is, I'm sure, a whole lot less than if we had an outside auditor, and they do use the guidelines from DRA very diligently, believe me.
Virginia, I'll recognize you.
I would like to know that I get audited by the state once a year. My motor vehicles brings in the most money, except for Diana. And it always comes out perfect. They send a letter, I give it to the selectmen. Never had any problems. And then we have our own auditors, as Diana said, who do our books, and we've always come out perfect.
Catherine Collins, 260 Stoneham Road. I'm hearing a lot of defensiveness, and that's not exactly how I saw this. I think this is about best business practices. There's no reason why the same person who's the treasurer can't also be the financial administration assistant. I worked on a nonprofit for many years, and we finally separated those two. So somebody can be the treasurer who can't do the books, and vice versa. I think in this case, we would probably just keep the same people on. But in the future, if Mary steps down, Mary Lou, I'm sorry, steps down, then it offers the opportunity for somebody else who maybe is not an accountant or an accounting type person to step in and be the treasurer. It's really just best business practices to have a separate treasurer position.
Okay. Further discussion? Diane, I'll recognize you.
I have put forth this warrant article, and I said this at the public hearing. This is not anything personal. It is not intended to in any way harm Mary Lou. Catherine is very much on the mark. This is to make sure that we're doing things properly. And frankly, there have been some issues of concern about separation of duties or segregation of incompatible duties. As I understand, in recent memory, the Brookfield treasurer has served as the bookkeeper for the Board of Selectmen. But I also understand that over time that role of assisting the Board of Selectmen has expanded beyond the bookkeeping role. The treasurer's duties are very different from the Board of Selectmen's duties. The treasurer's role is narrowly defined in RSA 4129, and it's essentially to guard the town treasury by receiving funds, ensuring the funds are safeguarded, and then dispensing funds as appropriate when presented with a request and proper documentation. The selectmen are responsible for managing the financial affairs of the town, according to RSA 41.9, which describes the financial duties of the selectmen, including item 3 in that RSA. They shall keep a fair and correct amount of all monies received, all accounts and claims settled, and all orders drawn by them, and of all their other financial transactions on behalf of the town. They get to manage the money. They get to manage the financial affairs of the town. The treasurer is responsible for managing the money. I have been asked on numerous occasions, why not leave it the way that it is? First of all, there is a distinction between a town official and an employee. That the selectmen and treasurers are considered town officials. Employees work for a public official. In this case, we have an elected official, Mary Lou, as the treasurer, performing duties on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. That's an employer-employee relationship. And that is not recognized. And in fact, without an identified role for the work she performs for them, it appears that she has no legal standing to do that work. It's not the treasurer's job to handle the books for the town. It's her job to handle the money and the accounting of the money. I provided the Board of Selectmen at a recent meeting with an article that was written by the New Hampshire Municipal Association by a government finance advisor speaking about segregated financial duties in a small municipal office. It begins with, one of the most important internal controls for any organization is to establish the segregation of incompatible duties to ensure that no one individual is in a position that allows an irregularity to be committed and concealed. It also notes that, quote, even in small town situations, internal controls must be implemented to ensure that adequate checks and balances continually occur. It's not clear what procedures have been actually established here in Brookfield. That said, both DRA and, as Rich pointed out, Plotzik and Sanderson have, maybe you didn't point this out, excuse me, but they have, both entities have made the point that it is not prohibited for the treasurer to hold the role of bookkeeper, but we don't even, or financial administrative assistant, but we haven't even defined that role. And I think that's important to do so. I have, at the hearing a couple of weeks ago for this warrant article, I was asked to present the examples that precipitated my interest in having this warrant article to ensure checks and balances. Rich already pointed out the disparity that I found last year. In a 4-year period, there was a disparity of $280,000 between what had been reported for net income for the town over those 4 years and what was actually reflected in the bank balance. And no one could explain that to me. My understanding, when Plotzik and Sanderson produced their report, was, and perhaps I wasn't at the meeting, perhaps I'm mischaracterizing it, but I was led to believe that the wrong accounting system had been used, that Brookfield was not using a modified accrual system of accounting which is required for government accounting, which is a little surprising and disappointing. I won't go into that level of detail, but I have concerns about how the Plotzik and Sanderson contract is being handled. I'm not going to get into that. What I will say is the most glaring example recently is that late in 2017, $63,000 was transferred from the town account to the trustees of the trust fund in error. Every year, the the town has to convey over to the trustees of the trust fund all of the funds that had been approved by the voters in March. That happened, but there was an additional $63,000 that was also transferred, and that was for two different accounts, a $33,000 amount and a $30,000 amount, to two different trust funds that actually the voters last year at this meeting had approved to withdraw from the trust funds. No one found that except me. And I wasn't looking for it. I had asked a question at one of the budget meetings in January about balances in the trust funds, and I was told that the trustees had that information. The Board of Selectmen didn't. And so I contacted the trustees of the trust fund, and I got their report, and immediately on January 23rd, advised them that there was a problem, that there was too much money in the trust funds. I communicated that by email to them, CC Board of Selectmen as well as the treasurer, and then at a subsequent budget hearing, Mary Lou had started the meeting by making sure that everybody understood that we never received that revenue that was in the budget for 2017 from the trust funds. Where were the checks and balances? I'm really concerned that we don't have adequate systems in place to ensure errors of this magnitude. The small ones are troublesome. This was a huge issue. And in fact, the meeting started today with Ryan identifying an amount in the trust fund which was the wrong amount. It's actually $30,000 less than that. At the February 24th hearing, the selectmen argued with me that this warrant article is advisory, and that is correct inasmuch as it is up to the Board of Selectmen to create and fill the position that I advocate in this warrant article. But the voters can appropriate the funds to support that position, and if they do so, the funds can't be used for any other purpose during this budget cycle. They also pointed out, or took the position, that the treasurer is responsible for keeping the books, citing a paragraph in the treasurer's duties. That paragraph only refers to the treasurer's duties. It is not referring to the selectmen's responsibilities, which is to manage the financial affairs of the town. And finally, at last year's town meeting, Chairman Rich Zacher explained why, you may recall that there was a warrant article that had been proposed last year to change the treasurer's position from elected to appointed. It was eventually tabled, but in the course of discussion, he was asked to explain why it was even proposed. And I took a transcript from the video. And he said, our treasurer is a treasurer and a bookkeeper, but the treasurer is elected. So you could elect me to be a treasurer and I can't keep book. So we thought it would be wise to make sure that the person that was appointed to treasurer had the skill set to do both jobs. In a lot of large towns, the treasurer is a figurehead and not the bookkeeper. In this town, they do both jobs. And that was the rationale behind the original warrant article, end quote. Rich's explanation really boils down to the Board of Selectmen wishes to ensure having a qualified bookkeeper. They have had the authority to create that position. This warrant article supports that. And I don't understand why they didn't
recommended.
Any further discussion?
I don't think that anybody's raising an embezzlement question here. It's basically, as I see it, it's clerical errors that affected money locations and transfers, et cetera. And clerical errors are one thing, and unless you're a certified public accountant, which is an official United States Treasury agent, clerical errors are not prosecutable, and everybody makes them. And unless we were going to hire a certified public accountant to do this job, we now have someone else, and we've split the job between two people, but clerical errors are just as possible depending on who's doing the job. Now, a person that does a clerical error may have a separate job from the town treasurer, but the possibility of clerical error exists no matter what. And that person is legally not responsible for mistakes, as long as embezzlement isn't the end product, which doesn't happen in Brookfield, quite obviously. So I don't see that separating these two particular items fixes any problem whatsoever. It's still subject to the vagaries of the bookkeeper's actions, no matter who it is, whether it's a person that's a treasurer or a person that's just doing the books. In either case, the subject of any anomalies that appear because of a misfiling, basically what it is a spreadsheet, QuickBooks. There's columns and there's rows, and the columns have categories in it. If you put something in the wrong column, okay, that's what we've done here basically, which is a mistake, and they happen, and we have auditors and other people involved in city government that find these mistakes, which inevitably will happen, including embezzlement if that were to ever happen. I don't see that this fixes the problem because it doesn't make qualifications for the skill set for bookkeeper any more stringent than the qualifications that exist now. So I don't see where this fixes any problem at all, except perhaps separating two different jobs so you can at any time say, okay, we're going to give somebody else this job, and the treasurer gets to do that, and this person gets to do that. That's all that this does, is separate jobs. It doesn't fix any inherent problems in the system. So the examples of the problems really aren't relevant here, because they could have been created, those mistakes, by anybody at all that was doing the book, whether it was Mary Lou or George Snell. It doesn't matter. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Well, I don't agree with everything Gary just said. I do agree with his conclusion. I think that the question of mistakes is kind of a red herring here. I don't think that that's really the issue. I don't think that should be the core issue here. I think that this warrant article is a no-brainer, that separating the duties it's obviously the right thing to do. And anyone who's worked in any sort of business or dealt with money knows that it's the right thing to do. It allows the selectmen to have the flexibility to make sure we have a competent bookkeeper. It allows the people to feel comfortable having somebody that they trust to take care of the money, be elected as treasurer. And it doesn't force us into a situation where we limit our opportunities for a treasurer to be somebody who's competent for bookkeeping. And I think that it seems like it's a no-brainer that this just obviously makes sense. There's nothing bad about it. It doesn't have to change how anything is done necessarily today. It gives us a huge amount of flexibility and protection for the future.
Anyone else? Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I also agree with Rob Collins, Catherine Collins, and Diane with this. After what happened up at the county a few years ago, they did not have the separation of the segregated responsibilities in that business office, and the delegation had to reappropriate $2.4 million. Now, I'm not saying this is happening here, but I think it's a good, prudent measure to do this. And I keep hearing that we have had audits done, but there are different types of audits. The county had no audits at all. We have not had an audit. I believe you're talking about we've had financial statement audits. I don't believe we've hired a financial firm to actually audit the books. That's much more comprehensive. So I also think it's a very good, important measure. Thank you.
Craig Evans, Mountain Road. I want to talk in support of this article. I'm not going to repeat everything that Rob just said, but that's my thinking behind my support for this article, that the salary for the bookkeeper should come from the executive branch, from the selectman's office, and that the treasurer, in that that's an appointed position, and that the treasurer remains an elected position. I realize that's not changing now, but I think that would be the next, if this doesn't pass, if we don't separate it, then that's going to come up an issue again in a future year. And we have to think in terms of the future that the town may elect a treasurer who doesn't want to do bookkeeping, and that it only makes sense to have the position be separated and have the line items be separate. Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay.
Michelle Lee, Mountain Road. I have a question, I guess, or a comment / question. I was wondering if this article passes, in the future, would it then make the bookkeeper be held accountable for mistakes? Like, since it's an appointed position, if the bookkeeper made a horrible mistake, elected officials can't be replaced until the next election, right? Is that correct?
Typically, they could resign, but generally so.
So then, my thinking is this article sounds like it would make that bookkeeper position become more accountable for whether or not they're doing a good job. That's just my understanding.
Well, an elected official can be replaced if they're committed a crime.
Okay.
So if the books have been cooked or embezzlement took place, then they can be removed from office.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I've received a request for a secret ballot on this warrant article, and I'd ask the following people to stand up so we can verify that they are present. Diane Smith, Bob Servichek, Craig Evans, Thomas Beeler, and Catherine Collins. I believe that this has been done properly. We will have a secret ballot on this issue. I will ask my ballot clerks to pass out the ballots, one to each registered voter. Please don't take one if you're not a registered voter.
Should we have the warrant article read as amended prior to the vote?
Yes, I would do that.
I think there's one there.
I have mine now down in the bathroom.
You want yours now?
I will take one too, please. I'm gonna go shut that thing.
A little time to pass the piece of paper. Sorry. You got it?
So I guess pass them down.
Thank you.
That's why I tried to. I would have said more. I tried to keep
Something every year. That was the only one I thought of all,
my glasses?
for the whole entire meeting, so.
I think that was
Terrence knows I don't have the ability to keep my mouth shut for over an hour, so.
I've got mine. And you got yours.
Probably would. Okay, well, you're right. It was opening and closing and.
Yes, she will.
I looked at it. It doesn't latch unless you pull the thing up. And the windows.
No, we just were doing oh, did we write the
Let's finish tear this one.
They're gonna come out.
Okay.
No, we keep it.
Warrants on a secret ballot from now on. Warrant articles.
Anybody here that doesn't have one of
I need to keep one. You need to keep one. Give me the extras.
All right, before I read the warrant article, I'm going to tell you guys how it works. We wanted to figure out how to do this without having to hand out pencils because we don't have that many pencils. What you do is you tear off the piece that you don't want and you insert the part that you do want into the ballot box when it goes around. There's a line in the center. That's not dreadfully important for this ballot because this is a majority vote ballot. But if we had a ballot wherein we had a 2/3 vote or something like that, I would only count the ones with the line on them so I can avoid having people accidentally or on purpose putting both parts into the ballot box and messing up the totals. So that's the why the mechanism is the way it is. I'm going to now read the warrant article as amended, and then we will pass around the ballot boxes and give everyone a chance to vote. After we do that, I will put us in recess for a few minutes while the ballots are counted, because I think we need the answer to this question before we deal with the budget. The warrant article as it stands right now, to see if the town will vote to recognize the separate functions of the town treasurer, RSA 4129, from the Board of Selectmen's responsibility to manage the financial affairs of the town, RSA 41.9, in the following manner. 1. Create and staff a financial administrative assistant position for the purpose of assisting the Board of Selectmen in managing the town's financial affairs, account number 4130. And 2, raise and appropriate $11,800 for the purpose of the financial administrative assistant's wages. Does everyone understand the article? Right? The ballot clerks will pass out the ballot boxes. On behalf of the selectmen, I ask you not to leave small pieces of paper all over the floor. I see them.
They're going around here.
There you go.
They're being efficient.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Collection box. Yeah, it's interesting.
See what that's
All eligible voters who wish to vote cast their vote. Yes. I declare the town meeting in recess while the ballot clerks and I count the ballots.
We're going back room?
Let's go in the back room.
You want to come back here with me so we can watch the count?
And then they had the wrong ward in the right. Lost revenue.
keep the heat down. Do the budget next.
On warrant Article 12, I will announce that there were 22 yes votes, 32 no votes, and the warrant article fails. We will now move on to warrant Article 13, the budget. 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the selectmen's recommended sum of $798,129 for the town operating budget. Said sum does not include special or individual articles addressed in this warrant. Selectmen recommend that appropriation. Rich, do you wish to make that as a motion?
Yes, I move that.
Is there a second? Discussion on the budget.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion for an amendment. I have it written. I'm Brad Williamson on Lyford Road, number 2.
I can even read it.
Thank you.
Motion to increase the forestry budget line item 4225.300 expenses to $1,750 for the purchase and securing forest firefighting equipment to complete last year's purchases. That is in order. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
The amendment has been made and seconded. We will now discuss the amendment.
Could I hear the amount again?
$1,750.
Which number?
The line item, is that what you wish?
Yes, please.
4225.300.
Page 22.
Thank you.
Brad, I'll let you speak to your motion.
In 2017, the town voted funds to purchase forest firefighting equipment and personal protective equipment, which includes fire-resistant shirts, hard hats, things like that. Some of the equipment in PPE is currently stored in my house, and my wife would love to get it out of there. So some of these funds would be to build a secure closet in the current forestry shed where the stuff could be put in and locked up. Currently, the building is very insecure. I don't want to say it publicly, but it's very easy to get into. Labor for the project would be donated, so it would only be the cost of materials to do it. The other part of the funds, the equipment we purchased last year, included the PPE, a backpack blower, and a specialty high-pressure pump for getting water long distances into the woods. In this town, we have a lot of remote areas where fires can occur, or have occurred historically. We now have the pump. We have a shortage of hose to get the water from the pump to where the fire is. So the balance of these funds would be used to purchase additional forestry hose, not regular structural hose like the fire departments use. This would be dedicated to it's a real type of hose for forest fires.
Do the selectmen wish to address the amendment?
This is something the selectmen struggle with year after year. We have equipment, but we don't have many people that can utilize the equipment. We pay Wakefield a lot of money to give us fire support. In speaking with Wakefield, there is forest, fire, they come. There's also mutual aid. The equipment we have is not really going to do much in the way of good there. We've seen it in the past that basically Wakefield takes control. I've supported getting this equipment more than once, but I think without volunteers and a core of volunteers, it's money being spent that's never going to be used, and that's the real issue. And if the town wants this equipment, the town wants it, I'm going to have to say it again, we need people that's going to help Brad. Brad's got a couple people that help him. But ultimately, it's Wakefield that's going to come and take this on for us. We have good equipment, and there's gaps in the equipment. I think the biggest thing is we make sure that anyone that does volunteer is properly equipped. But really, we need to know if we're going to ever put this equipment to use, and if we're going to have people that are going to be able to use it. And I guess I got one question for Brad. When the equipment that you want to put into storage, what we got the pump?
The pump would stay on the truck.
Okay, so what will be going to storage? It's just like
all the personal protective equipment. We have multiple shirts now, hard hats, to, if we do have a fire, when we have a fire, to be able to equip volunteers to have them safely in the woods. The other thing, we have a good cache now of hand tools. If we try to carry them all in the truck at once, it gets pretty crowded. The truck's not that big, so it'll be the assorted tools.
Question for you. You're talking about building basically a strong room in the shed, right?
Filing cabinet.
Okay. We have in the town office that back room where we were going to put a radio and whatnot. Could that be utilized instead of building something in a shed that's probably going to be tearing down in the next 5 years?
As long as it's secure, it could be, as long as there weren't other things stored in there.
I don't think there's much in there, but anything could clear out. Okay.
What I'm thinking is just a plywood cabinet, 2 feet deep, 4 feet wide, and 6 feet high.
Yeah, I'm just picturing inside over here to be
right.
Once it would be free, first of all, but it's also inside and dry.
Yep.
So just asking that. So thanks, Brett. So again, we have equipment. We've had a couple forest fires in the past few years. Wakefield does it. We have a few volunteers. Dave Champion actually learned the hard way that it's not fun terrain up there. Do we want to buy this equipment but not have it staffed? Or do we want to rely upon Wakefield, who we pay a hefty sum to come fight our fires? And they've made it very clear that they will.
And along those lines, because Wakefield is continuing to have staffing issues, they've hired 3 additional people to provide coverage. It's all about volunteering and staffing.
David? Dave Champion II, East Mountain Road. Just to hit one of the points you said about a storage cabinet, I think it would be beneficial to have a cabinet that Brad, myself, and whoever else is volunteering, Mike as well, we need to have access to that, because there's a time that we might have a forest fire and that townhouse is closed. So we need to be able to have access to it to be able to equip our volunteers. Second statement is, in the past, I've talked to some people in town about volunteering for our forest fire. And the problem that we've had is we haven't had the equipment. So trying to get people to help and, volunteer, you don't have the equipment to get them out into the woods. Now we're building up that equipment, we're building up the PPE. I've got 3 people now that have already said they were interested in helping out the town of Brookfield and volunteering their time. So I think that the equipment that he's looking for is a small amount to ensure that we have the protection of our lands. I understand why he needs hose. I was up on Tumbledown this past fall, was it, for the forest fire that we had up there. We have hose shortage. We had people that were ready to fight. We had people that had, tools, but they didn't have any way to get water because we didn't have hoses. So I think that the hoses are obviously important. If you don't have water, you can't put a fire out. Well, it takes a lot longer. Thank you.
I'm Doug Van Poole, just down the road here. I was the forest fire warden for Brookfield for 20 years. And I turned it over to Brad, about 5 years ago, right? And we had some of the same problems as he's having right now. I'd like to point out to all of you, unless it has changed since I was the warden, that Wakefield, when they come over here to fight a woods fire or a forest fire, we have to pay them extra. We do not, that does not include what we pay them for structural. And I guarantee you, we need the equipment. The hose it's very easy to ruin a piece of hose out in the woods, believe me. And we definitely need hose to get water to where we want it. Thank you.
Can I just find a question when it's your turn? I have a question. What was the cost of the hoses again?
Does somebody know the answer to the question?
Yes, the anticipated amount, Gary, was $1,300. It's $130 only.
Okay, that's one question. The second question is the volunteers, whoever they may be. I'm sure there's plenty of young guys that would be more than willing to serve the town in that way. Would there be any required training for these people? We're just going to pick a bunch of people and send them out into the woods fighting a fire? Or are we going to have them trained? Because, It's not the least dangerous job in the world.
You can answer that if you can.
Sure can. Ideally, all people going out in the woods would be trained. It depends upon the event. We would not send untrained people by themselves out into the woods.
Who would train?
I'm a state trainer for forestry and would offer that training to anybody that's interested. It's a 24 to 38-hour course, depending upon which type of course you choose to take. I like to offer the 24-hour course. I think it's more comprehensive. And so those people would be trained.
Brian, you have the floor next.
Just want to respond to Doug about the Wakefield. The past 2 forest fires that we've had them respond to that, at least I've been on the board, there was absolutely no charges other than we supplied them food.
This is true. This is true to a certain extent. We had a Pleasant Valley Road up here that burned only 12 acres on the ridges up there. Believe me, we had to pay Wakefield for that service to come over and help us. They do it all automatically, but we still have to compensate them for their equipment and for the people that they send over here. Plus, the fact is that if we bring in extra towns, which we had, I think, about 26 different towns helping on the Pleasant Valley Road fire, and we paid a good sum of money. I know that the helicopters themselves was $12,000 an hour to have those helicopters come in and work that fire. And we needed those choppers. We definitely needed them because there was places on the ridges we couldn't get men up into them. And if we hadn't have gotten the choppers in place where they were putting fire out for us, it could have lost Tumbledown Gate and Copper Crag. That's how bad the fire was. But we got it in time, and that was what we got. But it takes time, and it takes money, and it takes people. And believe me, I know. I've been a fireman since I was 14 years old. I'm now 82. And I'll be glad to drive a fire truck anywhere and help them out in any way I can. If they want me, all they got to do is let me know, and I'll be there.
Rich?
I hear what you're saying, Doug. I think the issue is, from my perspective, is we need the volunteers. We got the protective equipment. We're putting money into additional equipment, but we don't have volunteers to use it. So we keep investing, and we don't have the resource to use it. So I would suggest that once we staff it properly, then it makes sense to fund it. But right now, we're buying it so we can put it in a closet. I mean,
over here. Go ahead.
Ken Primo, Tumbledown Dick Road. After having those 2 fires fairly close to my place, I think this short investment in money is cheap insurance if we can get a local person. You know, hopefully there's be more volunteers in the future, but to have that equipment and be there quickly while we're waiting for other people is cheap insurance to snuff something when it's small.
Yep.
Here.
I'm Mike Moore. I live up on Lyford Road. I've served the town of Brookfield for 16 years as a deputy forest warden. I'm also a lieutenant on the Wakefield Fire Department. I've served the towns of Brookfield and Wakefield for 16 years, and that capacity as a structural firefighter and a wildland firefighter. I'd like to speak in support of the amendment to the budget to fund these modest increases for the hose and the storage. I understand where the selectmen are coming from as far as we should have folks to utilize this gear before we buy the gear. From my perspective, it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. If we don't have the gear, why would the people come out if it's not there to use? The 4 of us who are active, myself, Dave, Brad, Janet, could easily constitute a hose team that could take a flank of a fire, and with the gear that the town of Brookfield invests in, be deployed as part of a larger firefighting effort alongside the town of Wakefield and other mutual aid companies, and certainly could be there at the incipient stage of the fire to knock something down before it gets away from us. As you all know, we have a significant urban wildland interface in Brookfield. We're surrounded by forest. We like it that way, but if it's on fire, you don't want it burning down on your house or your property. So I think it's a modest investment. It's certainly, I think Brad's done a great job over the years trying to keep our budget in check. I appreciate the concerns the town has about spending money and our tax rate and the pressure on each of our pocketbooks, but I do think it's an important investment to have the hose, especially so we can get out there and knock things down before they get out of control. Thank you.
Here.
One more question. To purchase these hoses, is this something that has to be decided at town meeting? Or is there a discretionary fund that the selectmen can say, okay, let's buy the hoses this week? Which way is it?
We made the budget very small because we didn't think we want to invest in any additional equipment, put the money into our Wakefield resources. So we put the budget that's small. Brad's suggesting it's too small. He wants to increase it.
So I don't have to look it up. How much is the budget?
$100.
So that doesn't cover the fire hoses. So you couldn't buy them in July if you needed them.
Well, the budget had
$1. 4225.300 has $1.
that's so money could be moved into it. We had $1,000 for warden salaries because we support the wardens and having them go out and do their job. And we had some minor truck maintenance and no equipment. The idea was no equipment, just people.
You can't buy the equipment at the drop of a hat, is what I'm saying. Resources not there.
He doesn't have the money to do it. And that's
buy it now, or
he's asking for the money now. Once he has the money, he can spend it any way he sees fit. He's suggesting he's going to buy hoses.
In the back.
Can I get a clarification again of which line item and what the amount is?
The line item in the amendment is 4225.300, and the amount is $1,750. Any further comments?
Diana Becker, Brookfield. I think the key word here is that I'd like an explanation on is it says it's mutual aid. So does that mean that our volunteers go to other towns to help out when they have a fire, or if they come to our town to help us? Is it a reciprocal thing? And if so, our guys, if they go to other towns, really need to have the equipment to take with them.
Anyone care to answer the question?
That is on a town-by-town basis. We as a town of Brookfield are not part of the Ospey Valley Mutual Aid System. The way they come into play is Wakefield is a member of that system. So when Wakefield comes to fight our fires, mutual aid comes with them. And one of my concerns, and it's fully answer your question, Diana, it's up to each town whether they would choose to bring us in on a fire or not. I think a lot of people on the size of it and exactly what we have to offer also. As far as the mutual aid goes, I think I'm staying on top of this tomorrow. The town of Wakefield is doing a wonderful job for us. They've done a terrific job. However, due to a lot of circumstances, they may not always be available to quickly come to us. When I was on the Wakefield Fire Department, in one day, there were 7 fires over there, which kept their crew pretty well tied up. Not to say they don't want to and aren't able to make a response to Wakefield. They just may not always be available to immediately make that response. See, there was one fire down the end of Governor's Road in Wakefield that took them 45 minutes to mobilize a crew to get to that fire and put it out. That rank, it was a small fire, but that took 45 minutes. Yes, staffing is a problem, but one of the things that we're looking at, that I'm looking at with this equipment, as Dave said last year, they ran out of hose. We'll have 1,000 feet of hose for them to use. It doesn't mean that our people specifically have to use this equipment. This equipment can be pooled, shall we say, for other department members to use it. So it's nothing that would be exclusively to Brookfield. We would be able to share it with other crew to staff it.
Any other comments on the amendment? Seeing none? All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The amendment passes. That brings the budget total to $799,860. $1,078. Any further comments on the budget? Ann?
I don't think I had this information from any of the reports or documents that have been handed out. With this operating budget, is there a estimated tax rate that the Board of Selectmen would be willing to share?
I think we're planning to increase the amount that we're raising by taxes by about $25,000, as stated on one of the reports we filed with the state. I think we're anticipating to raise approximately $25,000 additional dollars, and that's based upon one of the reports that we sent to the state, because you have to take the operating budget, but we're pulling money out of the bank. So the money we pull out of the bank, we're not raising those dollars as tax dollars. We raised that earlier. So you have to look at the delta that's going to be raised by taxes once we exclude our withdrawal from savings. So it's about $25,000, I believe, last time I looked at that report.
Okay, so again, I mentioned this earlier. I've tried very hard to understand how the tax rates are set. And what you just described doesn't seem to fit in with the methodology that DRA uses to set the tax rate. They take the operating budget, the combined operating budget and warrant article approved at town meeting. They deduct from that the net revenue, any fund balance that the Board of Selectmen cares to use, adds in the veterans credit to come to a tax amount. And according to my calculations, the tax rate is going to jump from just the local tax rate, which you reduced last year by taking $70,000 of the unfunded balance to reduce the tax rate to $5.97 for the town. It's going to increase with no fund balance being used next year to $7.58.
I don't know how you know that. Because the value of the property in town is going up. And once it goes up, we distribute our budget over in a bigger number. So if everything stays static, then your analysis is good. But you got too many variables. We got revenue that we estimated, but it's an estimate. We've got increased building in town, so our tax base grows.
I accounted for that. I saw the town report. Our value increased by $1 million, so I added that in. I factored that into the formula.
Okay? You did a good job.
Ernie?
Ernest Brown, 1 Clark Road, Brookfield. The selectmen do not set the tax rate. They sit down with DRA and work directly with them to establish the tax rate. They're required to keep a capital reserve in the area of 5 to 11%. I don't know where it is today, but it's somewhere in that range. But this is a mutually agreed upon and worked out with the selectmen and the state of New Hampshire. So they don't have just authority to change it any way they want. They have to work and justify all of it working with the state. So I'm very comfortable with where we're at as far as procedure and process. I made enough trips driving over to Concord to do this that I know what it's about. Thank you.
Any other comments on the budget? Seeing none?
I'm sorry, Bill.
I'm sorry I didn't see you.
I've got a question. Looking at the page 23 at the bottom, subtotal operating budget. So 2017 budget was $733,000. Actual spent was $600,000, leaving a balance of $133,000 and change. Why, can you sort of, I mean, that's a lot of money that we appropriated last year that didn't get spent. Now, I'd love that number to be larger, right? I wish we spent less, right? But can you tell us why, where that comes from? I mean, it's spread around, right? But sort of in broad strokes, where did that come from, and why is it that last year, or in 2017, we could get by on $600,000, and this year you're asking for $800,000? So why is it that this year we need $200,000 more than we actually spent in 2017?
That's a good question. Well, the details are right here, right? Every line item shows what's budgeted.
Right. You guys spent 50 hours on the budget. You guys know this. What is it? Why is it 2018 we're going to spend 30% more, 40% more on our town budget than we actually spent in 2017?
We'll go through the budget line by line if you want. What's it like?
Start with Wakefield.
Yeah.
Wakefield's increase. Right, that's where a large part of it is coming from, is from our contract with Wakefield.
I think Rob's question is, we budgeted 7, only spent 6. Why are we budgeting so much this year if we only spent 6?
Yeah, can we make 2018 more like 2017? Or where does it have to be different? Does it really have to be different by 35% or whatever the number is?
Mr. Moderator? Just as a quick answer, just looking through the lines here, over 50% of that difference was just from highways spending less than appropriated, and from welfare spending less than was appropriated, and that's 7,000 right there. So, and then you can add all your little line items when you go through the budget at 3,000 and 4,000. It adds up. About 50% of it was right there.
I mean, I looked at the numbers and I see that, but it's like, maybe the answer is that we didn't spend on highways, on the roads last year. We're going to this year. Okay, well, we just appropriated 80,000 for that, right? So, okay, that's 80,000 of the 200,000, maybe.
No, that's not. Maybe 80,000 is a warrant article. If I could, as you know, if we don't have the money in the budget, we can't spend the money. So we have to put the money in the budget in the event we need to spend it. We have attorneys, we have summer road projects, we have winter road maintenance, and we also budgeted a good amount for a lot of building maintenance and whatnot. Some of it just didn't get used. So the money goes back in, it buys back down the tax rate. There were just certain line items that we have to budget for, because if we would get caught with our pants down if suddenly we had to go and perform a lot more road maintenance and we didn't have the money, so we'd have to pull it from somewhere. We need to account for welfare because we don't know if someone's going to get burnt out of the house or something horrible is going to go wrong. So yeah, there's a lot of extra money that was left behind this year. It left behind, but it goes back into the town and it keeps the tax rate in check, or tries to keep the tax rate in check. The $80,000 that you're referring to, that is the warrant article for the road project. That pays for the paving, the grinding, and the gravel only, not for Eddie to go and do, ditching and culverts and that kind of stuff.
I don't know, but we did all those things last year.
Well, right? we didn't do a lot of that last year. A lot of the summer road project got hung up, and we just didn't get it done. And there's just certain items that we just did not spend.
Well, we have the legal fund. We always put money in the legal fund just in case. And I think it's the road. And the welfare was 10,000. We dropped that down to 10 from 15 because we were fortunate last year.
Rob, your point's well taken. I wish we could say $600,000 going to be the number this year, and we're going to hit that right in the mark. But there are years that we're pushing the budget. There is no good answer except we need to have the money there in case we do need to spend it, and if we don't, the money goes back into the pot. For lack of better terms,
Yeah, the big one is the highway and road.
$60,000.
Even more than that. We allocated 180, it's down to 60. That's 120,000 right there on road projects. And we want to get those projects done this year.
Any other comments on the budget? Bill Nelson.
Thank you. The Bryce Drive, is that money included that was spent or was not spent?
That's part of the unspent money.
Any reason you couldn't spend it?
We needed to get additional surveys done in order to make sure things are done properly, because we don't want to do anything improperly. So it just got hung up.
Planning on spending it this year.
Any other comments over here?
Thomas Beer, I was wondering if Wakefield had an explanation for why the fire and police jumped so much, $80,000 increase this year.
They added 3 full-time people. They added 3 full-time people because they can't get coverage anymore.
And additionally, we had to pay into the state retirement insurance fund. Their town administrator found that we were not paying into that, so that was an additional $14,000.
Their pension fund, we're sharing that cost now too for full-time employees.
Any other comments on the budget? Over here.
Dave Champion, 2nd Lisbon Road. Do we see any of the financial returns from Wakefield by any chance for us? Like the ambulance charges $500 for a ride. They get money from the recycling plant. I'm just wondering if we see any of that revenue coming back to us.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sure they would argue that those costs subsidize their overall costs, so, you know, if they didn't, the money would be higher. So, yes, Dave, I can appreciate that. I'm sure that's...
I'm biting my tongue right now.
Any other comments on the budget? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of the budget as it has been amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The order of 13 passed. Rose, before I adjourn the meeting, will you tell me if there are 25 signatures on the petition in the back? No. Right. In that case, I will not present it to the select. I will ask all the people who were elected to offices.
Mr. Moderator, do we have an opportunity to do that?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, because not everybody had a chance to go over the time.
Sure, Curtis. It's just I was going to do it before I adjourned the meeting, so I could have it entered into the minutes if it was already done. If you would like to move to recess for 5 minutes, to give people a chance to do that.
Move to recess for 5 minutes.
There's a motion to move to recess for 5 minutes. Second. Okay. Any discussion on a motion to recess? We are in recess for 5 minutes. The town will be in order. Rose, would you like to bring the petition forward, please? And with the minutes of the meeting, please reflect that the moderator has given the selectmen a petition in accordance with RSA 39:2A.
Check the signatures.
You can check the signatures at your leisure. I think there are plenty.
How many were collected do we have?
It looks like about 50.
More than 25?
There's more than 25. Some of them, unfortunately, aren't readable, and we can't count them if we can't read your name and prove that you're a voter. So, but there's more than 25 readable.
Readable, oh, good.
Yeah.
Ernie Brown asked to be recognized.
Very quickly, I've been directly involved in this town government since '83. I've helped write some of these town reports over 7 years at least. This is the best town report I've ever seen. It's absolutely excellent. They've included a lot of the MS reports in there that have never been there before. I would really encourage you to go through them because it's an excellent product. Thank you.
Is there any other business to come before the town meeting? Thanks.
I'll defer to Fred.
Okay.
Fred Can, Wentworth Road. I would like to propose a round of applause for the road agent and his crew.
Yes.
Diane, I think you were yielding to someone and I didn't see who you were yielding.
was yielding to Fred.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is under other business, is it not?
Correct.
Okay. A year ago today, or thereabouts, town meeting supported the creation of a committee to look at outsourced services for the town of Brookfield. In April, the Services Review Committee was created. Myself, Rick Surratt, Rob Collins, and Catherine Collins were on it. I was the chair. A report was developed over the next several months in conjunction with a surprisingly interested group of residents that came to the meetings. And the report was provided to the Board of Selectmen on June 30th. They accepted the report at their first August meeting and posted the report on the website. They didn't, however, convene a meeting to review and discuss the report with the public, as we had been led to believe would happen. And in early September, without any notice on the posted agenda that there would be a discussion about it, the Board of Selectmen discussed it briefly amongst themselves, the report that is, and decided to table it and remove it from the website. I was not notified as the chair, and to my knowledge, none of the members of the committee had been notified about the discussion or the outcome. It's very disappointing. It's also disappointing that the Services Review Committee was not asked to contribute to that very nicely done town report. In January, without any advance warning to Brookfield, the town of Wakefield increased the bill to Brookfield by about $75,000, a 26% increase. No discussion, no advance notice. Also in January, this is information that I requested from Wakefield and was provided, their shared costs that go into the worksheet for 2017 ended up being $50,000 less overall than had been billed to Brookfield. And more importantly, the town of Wakefield reported nearly $375,000 of revenue associated with those shared costs. David Champy a few minutes ago asked about the ambulance cost and the revenues. The shared ambulance cost to Brookfield, had we used the actual costs incurred by Wakefield, subtracting out the actual revenues, would have cost Brookfield $1,700 for 2017 instead of $30,400. Furthermore, the ambulance account, which on the worksheet for 2017, was just under $200,000, $198,000 for Wakefield's cost that was to be shared. They took in $221,000 in revenue against that line item. They made money, at least according to that one, on that one line item. The Services Review Committee spent a great deal of time looking at both the Governor Wentworth School District costs and strategies that the Board of Selectmen and the town may pursue to reduce our costs that currently we have no control over, evidently. And it's rather disturbing that nothing has been done. So my question is, in face of these, I'm just citing the way, something has been done. Representative Ed Como submitted legislation to make the school district distribution of costs more fair. And it was inexpedient to pass, I believe is the terminology he used in the legislature.
Could you please speak up? We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Ed Combs, did you hear what I said about Ed Combs'
Yes.
efforts? Okay, thank you. So my question is to the Board of Selectmen, whether or not the board is planning to undertake any action regarding the outsourced services reviewed by the Services Review Committee.
I met with the administrative assistant and we discussed your report, and I gave her a copy, and we went over it. It was pointed out to me what the agreement said. The agreement says that we are billed expenses, not net. The agreement that we have, signed in 2003, I think, said we share the cost, not the net. That's the legal agreement we have. She also pointed out to me that the towns of both Wakefield and Brookfield would have to agree to any modifications because it's a legal agreement between two municipalities. Also pointed out to me that it can go either way with respect to costs. It can go up, it can go down. This is the agreement we have today. So then we talk about the potential costs to the town if we spin ourselves off. It's my opinion, I think the board's opinion, we still have a good deal. We can't afford to do it ourselves, which would be the option. So that was our analysis and that was our recommendation. Stay with what we have.
Okay, thank you. But my question then is, a couple of questions. Did you look at this report? Because there is a full, just referring to Wakefield, a full page and a half of considerations and options for the Brookfield Board of Selectmen for municipal services. There are numerous strategies and ideas to pursue, and if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read the whole report, that there were, I didn't write, I'll get into that, the appendices. You spoke with she's not the administrative assistant, she's the town administrator. Your contract is with the Board of Selectmen. And the point here was to engage in dialogue. If you do nothing, nothing's going to change. Yes, it was an agreement that was made in 2003. Why on earth somebody agreed to a contract with absolutely no constraints whatsoever? The only option right now in that contract is that, the only opportunity for discussion is that it says in the contract, both of them, for solid waste as well as emergency services, public safety, that the Brookfield Board of Selectmen can request to discuss it with the Wakefield Board of Selectmen. It's the Board of Selectmen that will have the control, and I would suggest that it's not just Wakefield. There are other strategies in this report that can positively impact our tax rates. And it's really disappointing that no one has evidently either read the report or chosen to discuss it in public. Did you not remember that you had suggested, you had agreed with us, with the Services Review Committee, that we would have a public dialogue about this report?
We received input from many other people informally at our coffees that leave it alone. We'd rather see it stay the way it is. There were 3 or 4 people on the committee that wanted to see change. There were many more people that said, we don't want to see change. So we digested that input, we talked to Wakefield, and that was our decision.
Yes, Rob Collins.
I'm curious, so I'd like to address something that Rich said a couple minutes ago. that you think we still have a good deal. And I'm not going to try to dispute that because, quite frankly, I don't know if it's a good deal. The cost went up, what, $75,000, $80,000 this year? And you still think it's a good deal, it sounds like. At what point does it stop being a good deal? What's the number? What that, and
You can just do some real rough numbers. How many full-time employees or employees do you need for a fire department and an ambulance? That's what gets you. Forget the equipment, but you're going to start hiring full-time employees and all the benefits associated with that.
Well, hiring employees is only one option, right? I mean, the review committee, I was on it, I helped write the report. There are lots of options, right? And building our own is one option. But even that, I guess my suggestion would be that your guess as far as whether it's a good deal or not is just a guess. And people a lot of people will just probably agree with that. I'm a very analytical person, you know that. And I want to know what the options are, how much, at least ballpark, how much each option might cost. Because if we did that analysis, I probably would agree with you. Yeah, it's still a good deal. But until we do that, I don't know how we would actually be able to demonstrate what the options are, how good or bad the services would be under each option, how much it would likely cost, what the other considerations are. So my suggestion would be sort of either reconstitute the services review committee, create a new committee, but actually look at what more detailed. The past committee quantified a lot of stuff around the contracts and what the issues are, and even started laying the groundwork for what some of the other options might be if we didn't stay with Wakefield. My suggestion is that you have a committee that studies that particular issue. What would it take to do solid waste on our own? What would the best approach be? You know, because we don't have to hire people to do solid waste. We could hire a company that'll pick up at everyone's house, right? There are lots of options, right? My suggestion is let's study what those options are and try to understand better and quantify how good a deal are we getting from Wakefield. The answer might very well be it's a fantastic deal. We shouldn't change anything. That might be the answer. I don't know.
Good.
Can I make a comment?
Can I ask a question because I wasn't sure if you were making a motion or you were making a suggestion?
I was making a suggestion, nothing formal, because I think that
I'm good with that.
Stuff
I just needed to know how to run the meeting. Okay. Who's next? You're next, I think.
Mary Ann Fountain, Lightfoot Road. I can remember 35 years ago when we first voted to go with Wakefield for these services. It was mainly policing that would have been, made the budget way too high at the time. And Wakefield, I think later they did the other services also. I don't think they all did it at one. But anyhow, when it was discussed sometime later, when the price kept going up, I think originally it was $48,000, and now it's up to what, 290. When the selectmen went to discuss with the selectmen in Wakefield about letting us do just the police or just the dump, I can't remember which one, they said, no way. The deal is it's all or nothing. So they probably still have that feeling about the whole thing, that it's all or nothing.
Here?
Janet Williamson on Lightfoot Road. Some of you don't know my real life job full-time is EMS coordinator for Huggins Hospital. I oversee 12 towns and EMS services in the county, and I can tell you that for EMS coverage alone, the current contracts are running between $300,000 and $700,000. That's not for equipment, that's not for fire coverage, that is strictly for EMS coverage and an ambulance to cover your town. So when you look at the figures, just to give Rob some idea of what's a good deal and what's not, the coverage is pretty cheap for us.
Yep.
I'd just like to point out, Catherine Collins, that some of those figures are actually in the report. So if the public can get a copy of that report, they could see that Diane went through several options that are there, and not all are that expensive. But yes, we did find that that was a big ticket number.
Here?
This matter is like more Lightfoot Road. For the benefit of those of us who have not been intimate with these conversations and meetings and committees, could the selectmen please clarify for us, do we have a contract for services or do we have a cost-sharing contract with the town of Wakefield for emergency services and solid waste?
I'd have to read the contract again. It's a contract for services. We're not, I have to read the contract again.
My understanding has always been it's a contract for services, so cost sharing is off the table.
That's,
strictly
that
they're
was my
billing us.
bias. If they're billing us
They're
what they
billing
want
us.
to bill us
Yeah.
for the services.
Okay. Thank you.
The last time this was taken up with Wakefield, the selectmen that met with them didn't fare quite so well, and our costs did increase a fair amount. So it's how much do you want to kick a sleeping dog, I guess is the way out.
Could the selectmen put the report back up on the website? Because obviously a lot of people never saw it.
It's there.
It is there?
Yeah, it's
Okay, because I went looking for it.
It's been like 2 months.
Bill? Years ago, that discussion came up with Wakefield, and we pay a percentage, or back then, we used to pay a percentage of based on the number of residents we have. The big stickling point was, when do you count the residents? You include the summer people, year-round people, and they did it in such a way that definitely benefited Wakefield. And since we have very few summer residents, and they have all sorts of people on it didn't work out for us, but basically it was take it or leave it. This is what we're doing.
Understood. Rob, I will see if there's anybody else before I recognize you a second time. Seeing none, go ahead.
So the Services Review Committee report does address the population counting issues and provides options there as well. Very quick, I'm glad the report's back on the website. Can I suggest also, since there are questions about the contracts, can we get the contracts on the website next to the report as well, so everyone can look at anyone that's interested can look at all the information we've got available, and maybe even put the worksheet that Wakefield uses on the website. It's all public information. I know people can request it individually, but that way, I mean, if save people some work, save you guys work having to give everyone a copy individually.
Piece in the town. I like that. Any other comments?
I would just ask that you check to make sure it's on the website because I don't see it.
Nor do I.
Although it's been on my Facebook page and my website since it was put out.
On the selectmen's page?
Yes.
On the bottom
I
right?
see an MS 535, an SRC report.
What's that? What is that?
Services Review Committee, SRC.
Oh.
SRC. Is this the federal government now? SRC.
Tricky.
Spell it out.
I guess we have to.
We kept having to say it, so we had to come up with something.
Any other comments on this issue? Are there any other issues to come before the town meeting?
Oh, wait. Sorry, I did have something.
Go ahead.
In reference to the inexpedient to legislate for the legislation that would use equalized valuation for school taxes, I've been in communication with all the property poor towns, which we are one of them, about this issue. They also supported the legislation. In committee, I actually read verbatim from the Services Review report about using equalized valuation. And the committee actually agreed with this. I had DRA, Steve Hamilton, sitting next to me, and he also described how the process occurs. Many of the people on the committee that heard the bill are also from property poor towns, so they knew where we were coming from. So it was inexpedient to legislate, meaning the recommendation to the House is that it shouldn't go forward. But the reason why was because the state legislature doesn't feel that they should be the ones telling the towns to discontinue the agreements that they have come up with. So after researching and trying to find all of the agreements the district has with the towns, I've discovered that one town can't find their copy. We found ours from a set of meeting minutes that was from 1963.
That wasn't the agreement. That was just a set of meeting minutes.
So
Yep.
where's the agreement?
You can't find it.
Okay, this is what I keep hearing, even up in Ospey, I keep hearing, well, the school's the most expensive thing we have, but we can't do anything about it. They're just going to do whatever they want. This is what I hear. There is a process for us to do to change this equals value, or at least to review the agreement we have with the district. I don't know why we would have an agreement from 1963. This goes with Effingham and Ospey also, and we never look at it again. I think we need to find what the process is, which seems to be unclear to everybody, about how we can do this fairly. And I'm going to approach the school board in a more positive way and ask for help to do this, because it doesn't really change the bottom line. It just makes the apportionment formula different. And I think we really need to identify how to do that. So the budget committees of Effingham and Ossipee and hopefully Brookfield, we have a budget committee, can get together and try to figure out how to do this. Because we should not be saying in the United States that we're just going to let the government do whatever it wants to us. I mean, this is a huge part of our property taxes. Here we are worried about, $1,500 approximately for hoses to protect our property. We question that. We question every little thing about our town costs, but the school just basically does whatever they want. No one ever goes to the school board meeting.
Point of order.
Sure.
I recognize you, Ernie Brown. You're next.
We didn't come here to discuss the school issues today.
This is under other business.
We have traditionally allowed people to bring
And
up business.
as the legislature said, it was inexpedient to legislate, so it's been tabled.
Let's vote it down.
He understands fully well. All he's got to do is sit down and write a warrant article and get signatures to move this forward if he wants to. He tried it in the legislature, it didn't work.
Okay. Tom?
I think it would be useful if people understand what the issue is, since the report doesn't seem to be widely available or widely known, which is simply that the school part of the tax rate is the only one that is not totally based on property valuations. It's based 75% on how many students you send to the school and only 25% on property valuation. And what that means is that for smaller towns like ours, if we send kids, we pay a much bigger share than if we went just totally by property. And that's what the report gives you the analysis of. Frankly, my point of view is that if you have it's like running an airline or a hotel. You've got fixed costs, the plane has to take off, the hotel has to stay open. And that should be the lion's share of any cost, because it doesn't make any difference how many, if you only have one student, you still have X cost. So it does seem like it's something that's really worth looking at and discussing. In fact, what the real cost impact are is that a fair way to do it? Personally, I think it should be the other way around. It should be 75-25 with the property value there, but that would affect Tuftonboro and Wolf. It would shift more costs to them. Which, by the way, wouldn't have as much impact on their tax rate as it does on ours. And that's what the community services report is about. And we're talking about something that was drawn up in 1963, and quite a few years ago.
Ernie, do you wish to say something? Any other comments on this issue? Rob?
Just real quickly, just to expand on that a little bit more, real briefly. Some of the towns in our school district pay 3 times the tax rate for the school than some of the other towns. For exactly the same services, exactly the same education. And if we made the change, if what the legislation that Ed had put in had passed, I don't have the numbers in front of me, it would have saved us something like $500,000 a year. It's a huge, huge amount of money for us. That's almost our whole operating budget, right? I mean, that's almost how much we spent last year to run the whole town we could have saved if that legislation had gone through. So it's a lot of money, and it's, in many people's opinion, what's there now is not fair, and I feel very strongly we've got to find a way to fix it. Ed tried, the Services Review Committee report has something like 14 different things we could possibly do, right? It came up, it has a long list of possible ways of addressing this issue. I urge everyone to read the report, try to understand it. It's a complicated issue, but, you know, and support doing something about it.
Anything else? Okay.
Different topic.
If we're done with this topic, I'll go on to another topic. Any other comments on the current topic? We'll go on to a new topic.
Just a quick encouragement, we had the discussion earlier about forestry and folks to help fight fires. If anybody's interested, encourage anybody you know that may be interested. We're always looking for folks to help us out. So any encouragement you can give other folks or yourself would be terrific. Just have them contact me. My number is in the report, and I'll be happy to talk to them. Thanks, sir.
Anything else to come before the meeting? In that case, I declare that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.